Welcome again. Today is long, but so valuable. Bill did a coaching with one of our clients that we're going to share with you so you can really begin to see why we love doing this work so much. One of our clients, her mom and her uncle passed recently, and she's been going through lots and lots of feeling that has also affected her eating. So sit back and enjoy this because it's really good.
Yeah, I thought I might just add a little context for the coaching that we do. We considered life coaches or change coaches, transformational coaches. And I know when I first heard that term, I thought, what in the world? And as I've become one,
And the good one, the very good one.
I've come to see that it's not that much different from like being a tennis coach or even a basketball coach, something like this, because what we do in our coaching is kind of have a good understanding of the game. So a good coach has got to understand the game. And to be able to share with others a perspective that they can't see in themselves. Because even like the best athletes, they've got coaches. Because when they're in the midst of it, you can't see the whole picture. You've got a coach that's a tennis coach, and he can see, oh, your ground strokes are going long, and the tennis player is trying to correct it, but the coach from that other perspective is able to see, try changing your grip just a little like this. Try changing your follow through, just let you know, and all of a sudden, oh, it's there. So the value isn't so much in being able to change people as it is to be able to come together with people, and from the perspective we have outside the court that they're in, playing the game of life, show them little shifts that are just like little misunderstandings or misinterpretations of grip or follow through or that kind of thing.
Yeah, what we do essentially is bring the wisdom out in the person we're coaching. They begin to see their own inner wisdom. And in that seeing, the difficulty falls away.
Yeah, I like what you're saying there, because we don't put a greater ability in the person any more than a coach puts a greater ability in the player. It's just helping them fine tune their expression of their potential.
Yeah, and if you like it or you feel, I'd like to know more about this, we're happy to give you a free session so you can see the value that it may hold in your life.
Okay.
So enjoy this session.
Okay. Thanks for joining.
Oh, we should, we should tell about, there's this great peanut sauce, a recipe, great over yams or sweet potatoes, or greens or salads or cooked veggies. It's really good. Enjoy it. Use it sparingly because peanut butter, which is its base, is high in natural whole food fats.
Yeah, so we're keeping the salt, oil, and sugar way low on all of our recipes now. So that's the cautionary note.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for joining us.
I have felt pretty capable of dealing with, the sort of what I categorize as minor day-to-day challenges, and sort of sitting and being with that, and asking myself what I can learn from that, etc. But sorry. This past few months has, I guess for me, what's been a big challenge. And I found myself sort of spiraling into old behaviors and thoughts and feelings that I just don't know how to get out of. I can, I can think, okay, I should be doing this, I should be doing this, but that's as far as I can seem to get with it, because that's as far as I can seem to get with it. And I'm really bad at being able to reach out to ask for help. And it's interesting how in my dreams there's been this common theme of trying to be able to ask for help, and whatever technology I use, won't work. So I have to admit, last Saturday there was a whole element of humor when I couldn't connect with my laptop. I thought, okay, here we go again, only now it's in the day. Anyhow, so the passing of my uncle, and then the passing of my mom within a short period of time, and then having to write her eulogy and going back, it seems to have unleashed so much stuff that I probably stuffed for so long, and it seems like, ha ha ha, we're gonna get you now. Yeah, so that's where I am, and I can laugh at it, but at times it doesn't feel very laughable, and I don't like where my thoughts are going, and my lack of ability to be able to bring myself beyond it. Now I can see that, as time passes, I'm slowly starting to get part of me back sometimes, but I want it all back, and I want to be able to grow from it. And so maybe I'm trying to fight a process that's just part of the process. I don't know. I like I said to my husband, I've been pretty lucky in my life to be at this age and never really have had to deal with major grief. When my dad passed, I was 23, but I was like, it got stuck. So it's like all of that is coming out now. So maybe maybe this is the process. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing that comes to my mind, Wendy, is to just kind of put grief into a context. Because grief, that feeling of loss, is part of, at least my understanding, is part of the human condition. There's a reason for it. And it's actually part of the completion process, that when there's a loss, there's a grieving of the loss as life moves forward. And it's not comfortable. But I don't know. For me, this is just something that popped into my head as we're talking about it. When I lost my parents, they died like 3 weeks apart. My mother from cancer, my father from other things. It's kind of interesting. And it was like the grieving process. There was so much pain. There was a lot of pain and a lot of tears. But in that process of meeting those feelings, there was a new connection, or I felt somehow a deeper connection with them than I ever had before. It's kind of odd. I don't know if that's making any sense.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like now I wasn't going to see them again. But it was so interesting in meeting that pain of the grief of the loss. It's like I created a new relationship, you might say, or a new way of relating. I found that place in me that I was always coming from when I related to them in form. It was so interesting. Like when my father passed away, I may have mentioned this before on a call. In California, you have to go and identify the body. So down to the morgue I go, and there's my father. But it was so weird because I knew that wasn't who I had always related to. I might as well have been looking at a log, And so that may have kind of started this new type of relationship, because I saw then that what I had always related to, where I was always at with them, whether I was with them or just thinking about them, that love and joy and connection I felt was not with their body. And in seeing that, it really helped me be willing to be okay with the pain of the grief, because I saw that I could still relate to them, feel the love for them, as though they were just, so we lived in different cities, as though I was, in my home and they were in their home, but in one way, nothing had changed in my ability or the way in which I could connect with who they really are. That animating force of life and love that animated their body and now isn't, but they are still. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, totally.
So I just wanted to kind of give grief a context that it is a natural part of the human evolution of relationships, but we so often get attached to the form and activities that we did together. We used to get together every Friday night and watch a movie and have pizza. Well, we probably didn't have pizza.
Yeah.
The kinds of activities that made us feel good. So it seems like if I can't do my Friday nights anymore, I've lost the feel good. But it isn't necessarily that the feel good was in the activity so much as the space I got into when we were doing those activities. And I so loved being with them. It's so interesting, isn't it? It's like a loving relationship is not so much about the proximity or the activity as the space I get into when I'm in that proximity, doing that activity.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we've been in proximity doing some of those activities and it has not felt loving.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how life is always there teaching us. I mean, there's been the obvious experience of when I'm with Connie and we're doing this, it's so great. But if I look at life in perspective, I've been with Connie doing these things and not been happy. But we're very selective. What's that called? A confirmation bias or something like that, where
Okay.
choose what we want to believe that supports our structure of the universe.
Right.
When I'm with her, I'm happy. It hasn't actually been my full experience. I'm very selective. And that seems to be what kind of sets the ground for my difficulty if I lose her. I selectively remember all the good stuff, and it's because I was with her and da da da. So, what do you hear on that, Wendy? Is there?
Yeah. Yeah. I understand how there can be both, seemingly um, opposite feelings with the same. Um, yeah. I'm, I'm sensing what's happened is for me it's unlocked or allowed to surface so many of the sad or unpleasant feelings that I had for so many years. And maybe that's progress. Like maybe that's a sign of progress, right? That those feelings are even coming up. But holy cow, there's so many of them that feel so uncomfortable, that I know my eating has really gone to stuffing.
Hmm. Can
And
you
then there's that whole cycle of shame because I'm letting eating taking over again, and away we go. Yeah.
share one of the thoughts that seems to be so difficult?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know. Like there was, I guess, like going through the eulogy. It had me going through photographs of when I was a child, and so much sadness from that period of time in my life, and most of it I had really blocked away. And it's like it brought all of that back. So there was, there again, so around my mom, like there was so many conflicting feelings. Um, and I was able, like, in some ways, I was able to work through those, but there's, yeah. And then I started doubting my own way of behaving as a mother and reaction to, and so then beating myself up. So this whole spiral of messy stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's really interesting, Wendy, that you have said, that it's really messy, but maybe there's really something to learn from all this.
Yeah.
And what comes to my mind is, when you're looking back at, you say there's a lot of conflicting feelings with your mother, and then that leads to you and your mother. And
Yeah.
it's the feeling that's crazy making, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you describe, how would you describe that feeling?
A berating of myself, like a non-acceptance of myself. Um, and I know that's a slippery slope to go into that, but you know, as I try to be with, I can see how much that feeling was prevalent in my life and in my choices of what I did and not did, right? Was the feeling of not being good enough. And oh man, I just don't like that feeling coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we've all experienced, I've certainly experienced,
Yeah.
when I'm in that state of mind of feeling not enough, I haven't done enough, my mind, in wanting to help me do better, comes up with some kind of dysfunctional stuff. My whole reason thing is all about that. I'm not enough. She won't love me just the way I am. So I've got to make sure I do this or I do that. And the thing is, she's not asking me to do this or do that.
Yeah.
It's, the logic that comes to me out of the distorted view that I'm not enough. What does she really want? She wants all of me, I think.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's beautiful that you're seeing that when you're in that state of mind of berating yourself, belittling yourself, that it, one, creates terrible feelings and it
Yeah.
leads to poor decisions, leads to poor thinking. So one of the things we've been finding with clients that can be really helpful is if we'll just go into the energy of that feeling, because, Connie's potato chip story, willing to go into the energy that was kind of driving the desire for potato chips, it was like, oh, there's this association that just actually I've been carrying forward since childhood that isn't true. My ability or my safety to relax isn't dependent on my father. Certainly not anymore. But it can certainly feel that way as a child. So that coping mechanism that we set up is helpful. It's important for our survival.
Yeah.
What's unfortunate, I think, in our culture today is that we haven't developed much of a support system or a body of knowledge and teaching that helps us to move beyond those old patterns of behavior that were important and valuable and necessary when we were young, and are actually not only not serving us well, but they're actually creating a lot of suffering and poor decision making.
Yeah. And I think what I'm finding particularly frustrating is I thought I had dealt with all that stuff. Right? So um, to have it feel like it's coming back at me so full force, just really disheartening. And then, like I said, but then I thought, okay, so maybe this is a good thing because there's some part of me that's letting it come back to be able to deal with it in what I know today. So, maybe I just have to realize it's maybe going to be messy for a while. And be okay with the messiness, which is very uncomfortable for somebody who likes to be in control, right? Um, Messiness doesn't feel very controllable. So, yeah. So hence, because of that fear of messiness, my avoidance of the calls, because I don't like to I'm very uncomfortable showing my sadness. And yeah, so I've been watching them in the privacy of just me time. It's interesting what makes me sad. There's just so many things that seem to set it off, and I'm okay with the sad. I am okay with the sadness. I just recognize that. But I guess the part that I'm uncomfortable with is how it's affecting my eating. Given that that's where I'm feeling really, really uncomfortable.
Mm. Well, it's interesting that if we don't meet it, if we don't really welcome what's arising and really meet it, then our mind gives us other options, which is food. So that too is very natural in a way. It's a coping mechanism, much like we used as children. And isn't it interesting how those coping mechanisms are to try to avoid this, what's arising, this, what the universe is bringing us right now to meet? Because even these negative emotions, they're actually made of the same energy that the positive emotions are made. It's kind of interesting that sadness and grief are actually the same energy that love and happiness come from, but they've got a little different spin to them. Yeah. And so they feel different. And because our minds are designed to keep us safe, which means even in control, happy,
Comfortable.
because discomfort and pain is part of the feedback system to move us toward what is balance, what is home, what is safe. But we get a little lost in that when we associate a particular feeling with an old situation that wasn't safe, that actually isn't even happening right now. These old memories that come up, like you talk about, this stuff comes forward and you thought you dealt with it and all that, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's not happening anymore. But because it wasn't dealt with, it comes up and the mind is wanting to move us toward a sense of stability and security, and we're okay.
Yeah.
Let's make sure it's not messy.
Yeah.
The mind will do that. But if we can understand that these feelings are coming up to be met, to come back into the wholeness of the energy of love and grief, love and sadness, what would life be really if we didn't have contrast in it?
Yeah.
It would just get boring. I mean, you have that warm tub and you get into it and it feels so good. And after about 5 minutes, it's like enough already.
Yeah.
It's contrast, it's movement. The nature of life is to constantly be moving, growing, expanding. And we do that through contrast. So it takes a while to really be able to be okay, to be able to find my sense of security and stability in the midst of what I would call a negative feeling. And what I found really accelerates that is when I'll go into that negative feeling to see what it really is. So do you want to take just a moment and, that feeling, that crazy feeling of this is messy, and desire to get back into control where everything feels okay, which is only there because I'm stuffing that feeling. If you feel that feeling without a label about it being messy or sadness, or you feel that energy, and you sometimes, if I close my eyes, it helps me kind of get in touch with the feeling, because so much of my attention is always what I'm looking at.
Okay.
So if you close your eyes and just feel that feeling, can you describe that feeling as an energy instead of like an adjective like messy or scary?
All consuming.
So all consuming, huh?
Like it's like I can physically feel it trying to pressure up through my chest, and
Could that pressure, Wendy, be its desire to actually press up through your chest, through your whole body, and free itself and be free? Could that pressure be actually the pressure of the desire to be free?
yeah, and so so in essence, I'm still fighting. Old habit, still fighting with myself, right?
Kind of like trying to hold that beach ball underwater.
Yeah, yeah, and it's pretty strong beach ball. Yeah, it exerts a lot of pressure.
Well, and it isn't even the strength of the beach ball as the strength of its nature. Because the beach ball, if it's above water, is just light and playful.
Floating. Yeah.
So it isn't any different above water or below water, but the pressure we feel, and often what we translate as being negative and messy and out of control, is the pressure that comes from resisting it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you just see this energy as wanting to have expression, wanting to be free in your life, what
that actually it um, conjures up a lovely a lovely image of it just coming and going, phew, away it goes.
oh,
Yeah. So once again, yeah, which has been a common refrain, in attempting to suppress, I've been my own worst enemy. Because by trying to suppress that, I continue to allow the need to be suppressed to maintain control over me. Oh man, it seems so easy when I talk about it.
it wants to be free, it wants to have expression, it wants to be
Yeah.
it wants to be part of our connection with our community, with our families, with who we are. It's beautiful. So, you mentioned earlier how you thought you had dealt with this stuff, and now it's coming up again.
Yeah.
And in our Western view of life, it's like life is kind of linear. We're young, we're middle-aged, we're old. But the Eastern philosophy doesn't see life as linear, it sees it as circular. And we just keep coming back around to learn what we haven't learned yet. So as a child, we do this stuff, and we learn how to deal with certain situations in life. And as we get older, we come around again with the opportunity now to see on a broader scale the truth of how life really works. So we keep coming around, and so not only is it circular, but it's kind of like a spiral. Come around again if we learn at each revolution. If we learn the spiral, we work our way up the spiral. And if we don't learn, just like what we experience today, that the energy of loss, of sadness, is not a danger. It's not the enemy. It's actually the energy of love wanting expression in a form that we're not familiar with, and that doesn't feel comfortable in our body because we're not familiar with it.
Mhm.
So if we can start to learn these things about how really everything in life is there to support us and to grow into more of who we really are, grow into our potential of expression of love, then we move up the spiral. And if we're not ready for that yet, and we stuff it with a lot of food or whatever, the beauty of life is that she's going to bring it around again. So
We'll get another chance.
we get another chance. We get a second chance.
Yeah, yeah, that's a lovely image actually. The the circular and spiral nature of it. Yeah. And it's interesting because in some examples of my life, I have felt that opportunity to have a redo, so to speak, right? Um, um, I just wasn't giving myself that around within this context. So, um, yeah,
Well, in our culture, we're not encouraged to go into those feelings.
no,
A cultural perspective is that it's messy.
yeah,
These kind of misleading misinterpretations of how life works actually encourage us to get stuck on the circle. And so it's so lovely when we come to a place where we find someone or something coming into our lives to point us in a new direction that can help us understand a little more about how life works, and it never ends.
yeah.
Always.
That's yeah, and I'm glad of that new learning that is ongoing. Like that's I love that, and and I see so many people that um don't stop learning or stop even the desire to learn, and that just feels so sad. Um, yeah. So as always, you're able to articulate and put things into such simple terms that it makes my chaos seem so silly. In hindsight, like I can look back, like in this moment, I can shake my head at myself. But I guess I had to get where I had to get before I could even admit to it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Everything
So
is perfect every step of the way.